Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Law, Buildings, and Code Committee meeting. We are joined by committee members Conti and Anane, and also by Council Member President Pro Tem Kimbrough. We are joined by our staff, our clerk Shaniqua Jackson, our amazing person who has a title that I never remember. She's just a rock star. She's the rock star of the council, and we love her. And our council, Robert Weiner. And this evening we will be discussing Ordinance 26-10125, Ordinance 2091-95, and Local Law F of 2025. And hopefully it's something we'll be able to move through pretty quickly. We're going to start with public comment. So if I could, and I have Nancy Goody up first, but if Greg Bell would like to go first, I will happily defer to whatever you would like. And is this, Carly, is this something that I can use the timer on, or I can just time it on my phone too? I'm going to use it on my phone. So, Nancy, you have 5 minutes.
Okay.
At 1 minute, I'm going to put my arm up in the air like that.
This will take less than that. Hi. Good evening.
If you don't
I'm Nancy
mind just
Goody.
saying
Yes.
your name and where you live, that would be wonderful.
Hi, Nancy Goody. We own 10 Irving Street in Albany, and we live at 20 Birchwood Court in Albany. Good evening. I wish to thank Kelly Kimbrough for proposing this ordinance for our city. This ordinance will bring transparency to a murky situation. Currently, it is very difficult to determine who owns a property if it is listed as an LLC. I understand why a person would want to create an LLC. However, LLCs are often created to buy and hold short-term rentals in Albany. This gives the owners a cover that makes it difficult for our Buildings and Codes office to reach the owners. It also makes it difficult for members of the public to know who the actual owners are. This is a step in the right direction for the city to finally address the myriad of problems of short-term rentals in our city. I do hope the council will reconsider the fines levied in this proposal. $250 is way too low for a business to pay. Why not make it more meaningful, like $1,000? They're a business. They make money. The city can too. As a member of a group that has worked for 3 years to get the city to address the concerns and problems of short-term rentals, I am very concerned that the public will not have adequate access to the owner's data as the ordinance is currently written. So that's something, if you could please maybe look into. As of today, drum roll, there are 461 Airbnb listings in our city. Those are just Airbnb listings, no others. They do not include VRBO and any other listing services. And I tried to find the last time I came before you what the number was, but it was lower than 461. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If we could have Gregory Bell come up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Greg Bell. The same address as Nancy. It's good to speak to a small audience here. We can certainly speak more in more detail, I guess. I too am concerned about the ordinance that's being proposed in a couple of ways. But basically, I would like to thank the council, the committee, for putting this forward, because it definitely is something that we have needed for a long time. And it's not only an issue of short-term rentals, it's also an issue for other things. Certainly, code enforcement is the most obvious, but neighbors want to know who owns property. Neighborhoods are based on social connections, and if you don't know who somebody is, it's a little hard to have a social connection with them, and also to hold them accountable. So I am concerned about the language that says in the proposed law that the public, there's 3 categories to whom the data would be accessible. And the third one is the public. It says with sensitive personal identifiers redacted. And I'm concerned about what those might be, like their name and their address. Neighbors should know who owns the property next door. That should not be redacted for any reason whatsoever. You know, basically it comes down to what kind of business operates without the public knowing where they are and who they are. You know, really, what kind of business does that? There's one category of businesses that do that. It's businesses that are doing things that are illegal or in other ways not of assistance to the city and the neighborhoods. We should not be coddling people to do things behind the scenes in terms of property ownership. Now, I do want to mention a new book. This is the book right here. It's called Platform Politics. And I have some handouts from this book that I want to hand out to everybody here. This is talking about computer-based online platform businesses. And a major part of the book is about Airbnb. It's also about other platforms like food delivery services and, you want to? Okay, yeah, sure, that, I probably knew about that. Good, thank you. Yeah, so I would like to, and they talk a lot in this book about the way Airbnb operates. And now, 3 years ago, when I didn't know very much about Airbnbs, I really made certain assumptions, and I would suspect the council has now been exposed to them quite a bit, but you know, most people don't really know who we're dealing with. The fact is they don't want us to know who. Oh, wait a second. Actually, the first of those, the first of those is actually one that I didn't want to give you.
1 minute, Mr. Bell.
Pardon?
1 minute left.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, basically, Airbnb selects the host. Here, take this one. They select the hosts who are going to be part of the representation of Airbnb. So when you see somebody who says, I'm a host of an Airbnb in Albany, and they make you think that they're just of their own coming forward and talking to you, that is not probably what's happening. Airbnb has a very strong background of control over who speaks. And they have something called a host club, and they intentionally do not allow people to represent them who are corporate owners because they know that that's not popular. Even though they provide the vast majority of income to the company, they look bad to the public. They want all of us to think that they're in fact...
Time, Mr. Bell.
Okay, they want us to think that we're just, you know, homeowners who share a room, but that's not what's going on. We're talking about a big corporation.
Yes,
So,
thank you so
good.
much. We really appreciate you.
Okay, thank you all.
We also got 2 public comments via email, one from Daryl McGrath. She is unable to attend, but she would like to urge the committee members to support this ordinance. As a member of Control Albany Short-Term Rentals, Castor, I can attest personally to the difficulties of discerning the person or people linked to an LLC. Limited liability corporations have been used many times in Albany as a way to establish short-term rentals with corporate ownership, and it is very difficult to figure out how to actually contact a human being in connection with ownership. Our code enforcement staff should be able to quickly and easily contact the partners behind the LLC. This is an important step by the city to demand accountability for absentee corporate owners of LLCs. I urge approvals of this ordinance in preparation for a vote 3 by the full council. Thank you. And by Laura Schoenholt. She's in favor of this ordinance, which finally removes the veil of secrecy behind the LLCs and other entities that own short-term rentals in the city of Albany. The proliferation of short-term rentals still needs to be addressed, but this first step in identifying and holding accountable corporate owners is a welcome start. Thank you. So with that, I think we should go right into discussing Ordinance 26-10125, an ordinance amending Chapter 231 Housing of the Code of the City of Albany by adding a new Part 7, thereto requiring disclosure of beneficial owners of limited liability companies and other entities that hold residential property in the City of Albany. Councilmember Kimbrough, you are the lead sponsor. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah. So basically, it's creating a local ownership transparency requirement for residential properties. In my area, like probably most of you guys, I have a bunch of LLCs, and things are going haywire with these properties, and you can't get to the bottom of who owns it or who needs to be called. So this, I think, would take care of that. There's a requirement for a local agent, which actually we do already have in the code. But there's some requirements here that would allow folks to, namely the tenant, to identify who the actual real owner is, aside from the LLC. And actually, to Greg's point about being concerned about the stuff just not being out there, the tenant will have access to who the owner is. So in the social world that we live in theory, you'd be talking to that tenant who's your neighbor and saying who's the owner, or getting that information from them. I think it saves us a headache to just not throw all the information out there and expose it. I think the way that I've set it up, I think works fine. You can access that information from the tenant or the resident in that particular property.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from committee members? Mr. Conti?
Thank you. So in terms of compiling and administering the registry, that would be the city clerk, or is the building department involved?
The clerk.
The clerk, okay.
Yeah.
And right now, in terms of rental units, there's a posting that includes a contact person in case of emergency, something of that nature.
Like a local agent or a manager.
Local agent,
yeah.
not necessarily the owner. The owner is not listed on that.
What's the question again? One more time.
The owner is not listed on that. The local agent is not necessarily the owner.
I don't believe it separates the two, because sometimes we have LLCs and I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the person, the emergency contact would have to be somebody you would be able to contact.
Right. They have to be, per the code, they're
So
supposed to have, yeah.
Okay. So another question, because there is state legislation, actually was enacted, I believe last year, that actually takes effect next year, called the LLC Transparency Act. And there are similarities between the state law and the proposed ordinance.
Okay.
One big difference is the state one is not a public registry, where yours would be a public registry, where people get information. But it's very similar in a lot of ways. And I'm wondering, in terms of drafting, and I don't know who drafted this, if...
I did in part, and then I had...
Okay, and I was wondering, I don't know if you're familiar with the state legislation? Okay, I have a copy here. But I guess the question was, to what extent can you, since the state registry is getting the same information, to what extent can what you're looking for in terms of the local ordinance basically be the same, so you're not creating different definitions or standards, and you're easing administration for filing the application? So basically, we would just be taking what you give the state, and basically it's taking that and giving the same information to the city. You see what I'm saying?
So you're saying,
So it's uniformity, but as I say, the state, your registry proposal is public, the state is not, but the LLC applicant, if they're filling out the state one, they can basically duplicate, just transfer that information to this without having to fill out an application that might be different.
so you're talking about creating a mechanism for
Yeah,
that information to
I'm talking about
flow.
creating uniformity between the two rather than separation, because they're basically very similar. And I don't think there's any real substantive difference. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, I'll have to ask you to look into that and see how we can, I mean, obviously, I don't want to create work for the clerk, don't want to do more than we need to do to gather the information and cover our bases, but
It's what some people accuse me of doing redundancy on the cabaret thing. Oh, he's not here.
I will say having the information public versus private is, I personally think, a valuable thing, so.
I mean, I'd be open to,
I wouldn't hate the idea of them, I mean, I think streamlining the information so that they wouldn't have to necessarily find new information makes sense, but I do like the idea of them having to actually do something here in the city of Albany where it's a public document. Because I know in my ward, there are situations where it would be really nice to, I mean, that we have issues with tenants and with all sorts of things where it would be nice to know who I call.
Right.
Because, you know,
Hmm?
you don't always know, I mean, to your point, you don't always have someone to call.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of problems. And I will say, I've had changing over of buildings in my ward where it's gone from a local owner to a not local owner, where we had someone to call, and then suddenly we didn't have someone to call. And even the tenants, they did everything virtually. They didn't even have someone to call when there were broader issues.
yeah.
So having this be a public document that, as a council member or our neighborhood services person, that there's actually a person that you can call, I mean, that was one of the things that I really liked about
Yeah.
this.
And if we want to change that, we can. And just as far as neighborhood services or code enforcement, they would have full access to everything. You know, they would see everything. It wouldn't separate the two. But the public wouldn't necessarily have. And I'm fine. If you guys think and
So-
want to change it to make it all public,
I
I'm
guess
all for it.
my question is, and this would be a question for Richard, because this is something that I could see us definitely passing before the end of the year that could go through enactment. If we are looking for similar information, is it something that we could move forward with this and then have legislation that, I mean, we could even do it when the new year happens, that we amend this law that is already in place, so that we don't have to wait for the state law to then amend it to say that we, you know, basically we're assimilating to the state law. But
Yeah.
I would hate to not move forward with this.
Yeah, I'm okay moving it out with and that's, if you can look at the state law and if it's a possibility, if it makes sense, and maybe some amendments that would make it consistent so there's not duplication, and then we can, you know, get it done before the year's out. I'm fine with that. I'm just looking
Thank
at easing the applicants, you know, they don't want to create different reporting
Right, no,
systems.
it makes perfect sense what you're saying.
Let's create uniformity to ease the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, first off, just want to say thank you for this legislation. You know, I'm always in favor of transparency and accountability. I am a little bit concerned, particularly when it comes to the public having access to individuals' names, the owner, their phone number, and also, what else they ask for. It definitely draws some concerns. I think that, building and codes want to have the owner's contact information or the clerk, somebody from the council members to make that phone call. But I'm a little bit concerned when it comes to the public having access to individual owners' information. I know that there are some good neighbors out there, but there are some bad actors out there. And I just don't want the city to be on the hook, particularly if a neighbor is contacting the property owner multiple times, where it leads to harassment, et cetera. So I am a little bit concerned about this legislation, but I'm willing to have further conversations. And just hearing information from Councilman McContie as it relates to a duplicate with the state, I don't want to burden our staff with unnecessary legislation. And I know that they have a lot of work in front of them, so. But yeah, I'm open to hearing more.
So I will say, right now, all property owners are, the difference between an LLC and a regular property owner is you can get the property owner's name and phone number on, like, that is
It's right
public
on Map G,
information
right,
currently.
Map Geo's site
So-
has it all.
So only LLCs, right now, only LLCs are the ones
That
that
you
don't
can't
have
see.
their information of ownership out there publicly. So if somebody was upset about something with my house, which they could be, because I wish I mowed my lawn more often, and I have to be honest, my house needs painting. There's plenty of, so somebody could complain. I still have vampire flamingos in my front yard, and it is no longer close to Halloween, so somebody might be very upset. And they could go on the Map GIS website
there.
and get my name and call me and say, hey, Ginny, what is up with the vampire flamingos? Get those out of your front yard. And they would be right. And maybe I'll take them out when I go home. But currently, that is one of the differences between an LLC and an owner, is that there is no information for the LLC. So when we have codes inspection, when we have, and I'm sure this is something that comes up a lot in your ward, because I'm sure there's a ton, actually. I mean, I know there are LLC issues because I have friends in your ward that have had issues with homes where nobody knows the owner to actually, like, a lot of times when you have issues where, and I will say, it's not just college students. I appreciate the college students, they're well behaved, but sometimes it's college students, and sometimes you actually need the owner to step in and say, hey, if you're gonna live here, you cannot operate in this way anymore. You need to make different choices, or I'm going to kick you out. And if you can't get in touch with that property owner, then there is no accountability loop. So that is one of the differences, that currently a property owner that is not an LLC, you know who they are, and you can get in contact with them. So the LLC is just a protection for people that have enough money to establish an LLC.
Yes, it was, yeah. So to all you guys' point, I mean, I'd like to move forward with it. In terms of the privacy issue, again, my intention was for codes and the folks in the city that need to see the stuff to have access to it, code enforcement neighborhood unit, the clerk would see, and even the tenant has a right to access that information, specifically who the owner is, not just the LLC.
Is the building department reviewed this? They're on board with this?
No, I'm told, we've been working on it for a bit, but I was found out tonight that Rick LaJoy said he hadn't seen it, and I didn't talk to him.
He hasn't seen it?
Yeah. He said he supports it, but,
Okay.
and the thing is, for him, enforcement is enforcement. That's not gonna change anything that they have to do. What really changes is the file that is maintained by the clerk, who I've spoken with, and she said she'd already made some arrangements with her staff on how, they already mapped out how they were gonna deal with stuff in her office in relation to this, so.
I'm,
if just a regular member of the public, at this point, I would imagine that FOILing would probably be the way they'd have to get it, but they don't just automatically get access like the tenant would. Okay, and of course, our internal departments all have full access to LLC, the owners, the whole thing.
Just another, I thought maybe there was, but I don't see anything like an application fee or anything.
Didn't I have it?
There's no fee involved either by the LLC that files this, or, so there's no, there's administrative
Right.
cost to the clerk's office, but there's no, we usually associate a fee or something to offset that cost.
Right, so we'd have to create them. How did I forget that? So we'll have to build in a fee, obviously, to,
So can we?
I thought it was in there. I just have the penalty.
Okay.
We can certainly hold this. I reached out to Rick LaJoy to see if he had any thoughts on us moving or not. Perhaps it's something that if we get a response back from him on his stance, we can pick it up later in the meeting. But, I will say personally, I'm happy to move forward with it because I do think it's an important thing that we have sooner rather than later. But I also think that fortunately, Mr. LaJoy is very responsive usually, and he might even get back to me in seconds, so.
Yeah, I'm conceptually, yeah. Was the clerk okay without the fee, or did she raise that?
She never raised it, but it,
She also
I can grab it.
Why don't we we're going to table this discussion for a moment. We'll see if it's something that makes sense to come back with, because whether or not we put it, there are things in this that would be easy to move through committee and add in afterwards, but maybe check with our clerk on her thoughts on a fee. And then we can move from one exciting topic to another exciting topic, which is Ordinance 209125, an ordinance amending Article 13, parking meters of Chapter 359, Vehicles and Traffic of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to renaming Columbus Day to Francis Xavier Cabrini Day. Councilmember Conti is the lead sponsor. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure, I don't know how much background I need to go. So I gave you an op-ed article that I wrote and that was published in the Times-Union on November 9th, which outlines the proposal. So, I've gotten this issue out there, and I've been watching every day to see if there are any letters to the editor violently opposing or not, but there haven't.
It's a $65 fee would be appropriate.
Okay.
Well, she kind of scrolled through the existing fees for other things, and then she
All right.
suggested.
So, basically this goes into the history as to how Columbus Day came about in the first place, which really related to treatment of Italian immigrants, and spurred by an incident in 1891, which was a mass lynching in New Orleans. Subsequent to that, President Harrison at the time declared Columbus Day a holiday as a way of placating the uproar in the country and also the Italian government at the time. And then Columbus Day just became kind of a surrogate for celebrating Italian immigrant heritage. But of course, Columbus has a lot of other issues, and so it is a distraction. And what I have proposed is redesignating that day in city code with Francis Xavier Cabrini, who was an immigrant who came to this country around 1889, and also who worked, Mother Cabrini, who is canonized a saint, but worked among immigrants and created hospitals, orphanages, and other services, and so has a real reputation that is more, what am I looking for? More reflective of the immigrant experience. and it helps us to focus on how we came about that day, but it also helps us to focus on the immigrant issues and concerns that we deal with today. So she really represents a much more appropriate figure. And instead of talking about Columbus all the time and not about Italian immigrant experience and heritage, we would be talking about someone who worked among immigrants and wasn't an immigrant herself. And it also transcends because it allows us to focus on the immigrant experience today as well. So I've tried to get this issue out there. To you, I've put it out on social media and everything else. It was even announced, that I wrote this in church that I go to, and I have gotten nothing but positive response. I did get one negative call about it being a terrible idea, but I put it out there as much as I could, and I have gotten positive response as far as I know, and I'd like to be able to move forward with it. I think at the last meeting, we also talked about combining it with Indigenous Peoples Day, which I'm okay making that amendment. Indigenous peoples, there are other days for the celebration of Indigenous people. I think what happened with Columbus, it became a lightning rod, and the celebration of Indigenous People Day on Columbus Day basically was a reaction to Columbus. And it's, whatever. But I'm happy with putting both in, which a number of communities do reflect both and celebrate both. Some just one and some just the other. But anyway, that's as a whole. And if you have any questions?
I will say, Mr. Conti, this is one of those items that may not seem like the biggest deal, but it actually is. It's correcting an injustice, and I very much appreciate you at the end of your 25-year tenure doing this. I personally would love to have the amendment to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day too, especially because I think that it recognizes the true reason behind having an Italian recognized, but while we do recognize Indigenous people in other ways, we don't necessarily recognize them with a day off. And so allowing this day that a lot of people get off to, at least in the city of Albany, recognize the plight of Italians along with the plight of Indigenous peoples, which Columbus directly did. I mean, that is why we've discussed it as Indigenous Peoples Day, because Columbus did not treat Indigenous people well. In fact, he massacred them. So allowing us to recognize someone that truly symbolizes the reason behind the day, along with correcting the injustice behind the focus on Columbus, I think, from my perspective, is something I would love to see in the city of Albany. And I appreciate your bringing the whole thing up, because I think both of them are appropriate, and your willingness to amend. Councilmember Nani, do you have anything to add?
I just want to thank the sponsor of this legislation. I think the chair said it. It's important that, to rewrite history and especially correct the wrongs. I fully support this legislation, and I'll make a motion.
And so what I will do, just on the amendment, where you see Francis Xavier Cabrini Day, I will insert after that and Indigenous Peoples Day. And I think that's the way to do it before observed.
That sounds good to me. Councilmember Anani said that he was comfortable making a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a motion to move Ordinance 2091-25 out of committee with a positive recommendation, with the additional amendments for Indigenous Day being included.
And should I second, because it's your legislation?
I can second it too.
Go ahead.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is unanimous. Excellent. Well, that is a truly wonderful thing.
Okay, good.
We'll discuss local law F, and then we'll get back to ordinance 26-10125 because, thank goodness for Mr. LaJoy of Codes who got back to me already. But I will note, local law F, a local law amending Part 41, Commission of Monuments and Public Art of Chapter 42, Departments and Commissions of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to the scope of the commission's responsibilities and authority. Councilmember Zamer was not able to attend this evening. She's very comfortable with it moving forward, but she said this about the legislation. She said it's very straightforward legislation. The original legislation required the commission to create online resources, cataloging, and communication, which is impractical given they have no budget and are volunteers from the community. It also clarifies that the commission should focus on monuments on city-owned property, not on other levels of government property, because as the capital of New York State, we have a lot of monuments that we have no oversight over in our area, and it's something that making sure that the commission only focuses on the monuments that we have the ability to actually impact is important. I'm sure that if the commission wanted to put an opinion paper out, they could, or an individual commissioner, but this would focus them on just having that, and then also taking something out of their charter that is not really appropriate for them, that they don't have the staff or resources for. Do we have any questions on that?
I assume this came from the commission itself, or?
I think it came from a combination of things like that. I don't think it came from the commission itself, but I think it came from communications with commission and discussions about, as they're moving forward on things, difficulties with achieving their goals. And also, I think discussions on looking at monuments that were not within the city's purview, which is just not something that we have the ability to impact.
Yeah, otherwise I'm okay with it.
Excellent. Could I get a motion on that?
Oh, yeah. I just want to say that I'm fully in support of it. I think it's important to be intentional. It's something that a lot of residents are passionate about, and I think it's important to be intentional and focus on what we can actually achieve. So I'd like to make a motion to move local law F of 2025 out of committee with a positive recommendation.
I'll second.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Then we can circle back to ordinance 26-10125. I did hear back from Mr. LaJoy, who is in charge of codes. He said that he was not originally aware of the legislation, but he has looked it over and he thinks it looks good. And he noted that it was the clerk's office that had the primary oversight of it, but it also allowed his office to have more access to information. So it seems like that's something that would be a good thing. He doesn't see any pressure on his office, but does see expanded access. So I'm not sure I can bring that up to committee members just as we are close to the end of the year. Is this something that we would be comfortable moving and looking at a draft, and if we're not comfortable with the draft, we can pull it back into committee and have another meeting?
Yeah.
So what we'd be looking at is adding a $65 fee to it, and we also would be making sure that any of the information that we're basically in line with any of the information that the state is requiring, which I don't think that we would necessarily be citing the state law,
No.
because we're not going to be necessarily following the state law, but instead we would be ensuring that we are requiring the same information. So as LLCs sign up, have to register for the state, they also can use that same information to register for the city of
Yeah,
Albany.
that was the intent. Yeah.
Also, the penalty, I'd be fine with increasing it to $1,000. I mean, we're talking about businesses here. The simple way to avoid the penalty is to, you know, stay in line and do the right thing.
So when you,
I just want to make sure, like, just point of clarification.
You're worried about?
No, I'm saying, sometimes people put things in LLCs that are not in the business of making profit. I know individuals that do it
Right.
and they own one
Small,
property.
you're talking smaller
small
owners
mom
that,
and pops, yeah.
yeah.
but-
And
For-
it is $250 per month, so it's
Yeah,
not,
that's
it's not, it's not as
unit
if
per
it's
month, yeah.
something that, I mean, it's not as if it's something that it's like just a $250 penalty and then you're
Right.
done. It's $250 per month, and I will say,
We can add a corporate clause.
per unit,
we do, and while I know that you will not necessarily be in the position to have legislation in the future, I think that there are at least two members here that would be very willing to carry legislation to raise this fee, should
If
it
need be.
be something that is necessary in the future.
Okay, thank you.
So, could I get a motion to move this through the committee with a positive recommendation with the changes of making sure that we have the same information as the state law and adding a $65 application fee, with the understanding that if this is something that members look at and we're not comfortable with,
come back.
we would bring it back to committee and have a committee meeting?
Good.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So ideally, we'll kind of get on that as soon as possible and try to get it to the members so they can. Okay, that's perfect.
Okay. Councilmember Anane is not comfortable voting on this at this time, so it is not
Okay.
something we're able to move forward as we only have 3 members here.
Okay.
So we will have to schedule another committee meeting before the end of the year, and hopefully
okay.
we'll have enough members that will be able to vote regardless of,
Okay.
yeah, maybe it's something, and I'll just note, before our next council meeting, maybe we could do like a 6 o'clock law committee meeting to see if council members are ready, and then that's something that we could
Okay.
just meet briefly before, because I don't think it would be a long meeting.
Yeah, and,
on
and the
this.
changes can be made by
And the
then, so you
changes
can see
could
the
be made
final.
before that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, so that's not, I mean, in general, with those changes in there, it's probably a good idea to see it anyway, so. So we'll do a very brief meeting. We have noted on the record all of the words in favor of it. We really appreciate you coming in person. We appreciate the people sharing the information, and we will take that up before our next council meeting. So with that, if I could get a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Excellent. We moved by Councilmember Conti, seconded by Councilmember Anane. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.